Most people think money is just paper, just numbers on a screen. But what if I told you the US dollar is the most powerful weapon on Earth? More powerful than bombs, more invasive than surveillance, more dangerous than missiles. Because this isn't just currency, this is control. For over 80 years, America has used the dollar not just to trade, but to rule, to manipulate, to punish, to build an empire without ever firing a shot. Today, we're pulling back the curtain to uncover how the dollar became a financial superweapon and how the world is starting to fight back. This is the hidden history of the dollar empire. In 2022, the US froze over $300 billion of Russia's currency reserves. One click, gone. When Iran tried to sell oil without using dollars, its economy was instantly suffocated. Saudi Arabia held up the global economy for decades, until they quietly let the petrodollar expire. And behind it all, a system built not on trust, but control. Digital cages, debt traps, invisible chains. The dollar isn't just a currency, it's a weapon, and the world is beginning to realize it. But to understand where we are, we need to go back to the moment the dollar became king. In 1944, with World War II nearing its end, 44 nations gathered in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. The world was still burning, cities flattened, economies broken, trust shattered. They came not just to negotiate, but to survive. These countries needed a new financial system, one that could restore stability, prevent chaos, and rebuild the global economy. At the time, the US was the only major economy left intact. It held over 2/3 of the world's gold. Its factories were booming, its military unrivaled. The solution? Peg every currency to the US dollar and peg the dollar to gold. At $35 an ounce, and with the US holding nearly 75% of the world's gold reserves, the dollar became the foundation of the entire post-war economy. This wasn't just about economics. It was about order, trust, power. The world needed a new anchor, and America offered its currency, with strings attached. This gave the US unprecedented power, a privilege no other nation had. America could spend without restraint, run deficits, print dollars, and yet the world had no choice but to accept them. Because if you wanted to trade, to stabilize your economy, or to rebuild after the war, you needed dollars. The dollar was no longer just America's currency. It became the world's. And that was just the beginning. But the golden promise didn't last. As the US spent trillions on war, first Korea, then Vietnam, it kept printing dollars, more than it had gold to back. Europe noticed, France in particular. Under President Charles de Gaulle, France began demanding its gold, cashing in paper dollars for bullion. Shiploads of gold left American vaults. Confidence wavered. And then on August 15, 1971, everything changed. President Nixon appeared on national television and dropped the financial bombshell. I have directed Secretary Connolly to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold. It wasn't temporary. The US had abandoned the gold standard. The dollar became a fiat currency, backed by nothing but the promise of the US government. Many feared collapse, hyperinflation, chaos. But the opposite happened. The dollar didn't fall, it rose. Because America had a new plan, one darker, one that turned the dollar from a symbol of value into a tool of domination. After cutting ties with gold, the US dollar needed a new anchor, and they found it. Not in metal, but in oil. In the 1970s, amid rising inflation and Middle Eastern instability, the US approached Saudi Arabia, the world's largest oil producer, with a proposition cloaked in secrecy. Sell your oil exclusively in dollars. In return, America would offer military protection, weapons, and global influence. Saudi Arabia agreed. Other OPEC nations followed. It was the birth of the Petrodollar system, a financial alliance that ensured global demand for the US dollar, as long as oil kept flowing. Now, any country that wanted to buy oil from any OPEC state first needed dollars. But that was only half the brilliance. Oil-producing nations flooded with dollars had few places to park their wealth. So where did they send it? Back to the US, in the form of treasury bonds, stock purchases, and American infrastructure. This created a closed loop of dominance. America prints dollars. The world uses those dollars to buy oil. Oil nations reinvest in America. And so the US could run massive deficits, fund wars, expand its influence, while the rest of the world kept its engine running on green paper. But this deal came with shadows. Those who challenged it, from Iraq's Saddam Hussein to Libya's Muammar Gaddafi, found themselves facing more than economic sanctions. Oil wasn't just powering the global economy anymore. It was now powering an empire. As the dollar's grip expanded, America built a new kind of weapon, not made of steel or fire, but software. In 1973, the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication, or SWIFT, was founded. It became the nervous system of global money movement. Over 11,000 banks in more than 200 countries connected through it. Every major transaction, trade, oil, reserves, passed through SWIFT. And while SWIFT claimed to be neutral, the US held the master key. In 2012, Iran was cut off from SWIFT. The results? Devastating. Their economy contracted by over 6%. Inflation soared. Vital goods vanished. In 2022, Russia faced a similar fate. Over $300 billion in reserves? Frozen. That wasn't theft. It was legal, because the world ran on the US-dominated system. The dollar had become a digital cage, a financial kill switch. You didn't need to invade or bomb or blockade. You just had to click, deny access, and watch an entire nation's economy suffocate. Sanctions weren't just punishment, they were power plays. And in this invisible war, the dollar was both the sword and the shield. For decades, the dollar was unchallenged. It dominated oil, trade, debt, and digital networks. But cracks were forming. Enter BRICS, a coalition of rising powers: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Nations tired of dancing to America's financial tune. Russia built its own payment network after US sanctions. China launched the SIP system, an alternative to SWIFT. India began trading with Iran using rupees instead of dollars. Brazil settled trade with China directly in Yuan. These weren't isolated moves. They were signals. The world was no longer afraid to break the rules of the dollar empire. And the biggest blow? In 2024, Saudi Arabia, the very heart of the Petrodollar Pact, let its agreement to sell oil only in dollars quietly expire. Now, oil is being traded in euros, yuan, even Indian rupees. What once seemed unthinkable was now reality. And as alternatives emerge, from CBDCs to gold-backed digital assets, America's control over global money begins to loosen. The unraveling had begun. The US dollar isn't just currency. It's identity. It's the foundation of American consumption, government spending, debt accumulation, and global leverage. If demand for dollars plummets, what happens? The consequences could be catastrophic. Foreign nations dunk US debt, interest rates skyrocket, the Fed loses control over inflation, the government struggles to fund itself, pensions, mortgages, markets, all destabilized. Worse, it could trigger a monetary civil war as nations scramble to establish new anchors: gold, crypto, regional currencies, or CBDCs. The world isn't ready for a post-dollar order, but it may not have a choice. Yet, The US may not go quietly. If history teaches anything, it's this. Empires don't give up power. They double down, weaponizing even harder, exporting inflation, tightening sanctions, expanding surveillance. The dollar's next act could be more dangerous than anything before it, because now it's fighting for survival. This is the empire we never voted for, the war we never saw, and the weapon we use every single day. The US dollar was once backed by gold. Now it's backed by faith, by fear, by force. We swipe it, we save it, we chase it, and yet we rarely ask, what is it? This isn't just financial history. It's the story of power, of how money shapes empires, and how empires use money to shape us. The dollar isn't just currency, it's control. And the next chapter is being written now. Want more financial history they don't teach in school? Subscribe, comment what you think happens next, and share this if you believe people need to understand the empire they live inside. Wealth builds power. History exposes it. This is Wealth Historian.